You need this shit in your life.
What's up, y'all? It's Anime here with another episode of Unsigned Hype, where I come to you to get your eyes on another hidden gem. And today I'm joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, the man who has taken it upon himself to bring back that good 80s to 90s Saturday morning cartoon goodness to the realm of independent comics. I'm here with Gilly Writes Comics from Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. Gilly, how you doing, man?
Well, appreciate you for having me on. As Anime says so eloquently, I'm trying to bring that 80s, 90s nostalgia, that fun, that goodness back through Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. So again, thanks for having me on and looking to just talk whatever, talk shop and just have a good time on the stream.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. So for those of y'all who saw a couple unsigned hypes ago, I did recently read the first issue of Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, and I'm gonna let the man himself here go into detail a bit and explain it a bit for y'all who didn't see that review, but you should definitely go watch the review, and then you should go to Kickstarter to go back it because you can get it right now. But let me stop wasting time, man. Gilly, go ahead, break it down to the people. What is Galactic Rodents of Mayhem?
Yeah, just as Anime said, I gave him a preview of Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. We'd like to call it also GROM, and it's a love letter. It's a comic book love letter. I wanted to write something that I thought would be fun to read through. I love comics. I grew up on video games, comic books, action figures, Saturday morning cartoons with the cereal. And as I tried to pitch to bigger studios like your Image, like your Dark Horse, constantly getting rejected is how it goes. I said, you know what? I got to create something. I got to create something. So I went underground and I started creating comics, started crowdfunding them. And my biggest, my baddest creation is Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. And that's your TMNT Star Wars mashup. You could even call it the Capybara love child of TMNT and Star Wars. That was conceived during a Saturday morning cartoon marathon. If that just sounds wild to you, trust me, check out Galactic Rodents of Mayhem on Kickstarter. Check out Anime's little preview video because it's amazing. The artwork we have is second to none. The story is also second to none. It does a good job of knowing, like, I know what I'm getting into. I'm getting into Eastman and Laird territory, but I'm having fun with it, but also showing, hey, this isn't just another TMNT ripoff, anthropomorphic capybaras. This is something fresh that kind of takes on that nostalgia, that's influenced by it, guided by it. It brings you that sense of familiarity so you can get in the comic, feel comfortable, and just get involved with our universe, get immersed.
Right. I really like how you mentioned right here that it's a love letter. You're paying homage to it, but it's also your own thing. Because there's something I do see a few times in like the more indie realm is I understand like we all come from our generations and we have like our favorite anime, our favorite cartoon, this and that. And I understand wanting to pay honor to that. But it's very important when you're making these things that you still have your own identity. And that's one thing I can definitely say about GROM is that when I was reading it, I never got the feeling of, oh, this is just a TMNT ripoff, or it's a Bucky O'Hare ripoff, or it's trying to be Street Sharks or whatever. Like it's in that vein of that sort of that type of material, but it's not just XYZ thrown into a blender and it's like, bam, here come out Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. Like if I had read this even without knowing about TMNT or anything else, I'd still love it. I'd still love it. And that I think that's one of the best things that we can do as indie creators that want to pay homage to our favorite things of the past. Definitely you have that environment, you give off that energy, but let it be enjoyable for folks who aren't necessarily connected to that old stuff. So it's like, for those of us who have nostalgia for those things, it's a huge extra bonus, humongous. But anyone could come in and enjoy it. Like your grandma could love it, your nephew could love it. It's just dope shit, man. It's just dope. And you brought up the art. I do specifically need to shout out the art, like the colorist, the inker, all y'all just did y'all damn thing. Y'all stuck both feet into that art and just went to work. Like One, I think my favorite aspect of the art is, aside from just the cool action shots, is just how you guys do the paneling. I love comic books that take advantage of the comic book medium, and y'all definitely play around with it. You don't just have a standard like 3 by 2 grid on something. Like, you'll be one page and it'll be kind of standard, and you'll flip the page and it'll be stuff going all which way. It'll be a dog fight, and like the panels are like arranged like the panels themselves are in a dog fight. Like, whose idea was that? Was that your thing, or was that like another person, or was like more of a collaborative feel to just be like, just go crazy with this paneling?
Of course, I'm going to want to take credit for that, but I'll only take credit in that I write my scripts, I write my comic book scripts in a way that leaves my artist unchained.
Yeah.
You know, I might put like top down angle, I might put like this and that, and I let Sebastian, he's the co-creator on Galactic Orders Mayhem.
Mhm.
I let him have like I want to create the scene where he gets a sense of everything that's going on, everything that's important narratively,
Yep.
and then he just like okay, and his mind just runs wild. So that's what I like. So the paneling choices, there might be a page where I want it a certain way,
Hmm.
and it's narratively. I might be like like this, like that, and I'll have it scoped out in a certain way. But a lot of those crazy, jarring, a lot of the influences there is, and I might put something that's like anime style in the, like when I write the panel, let's just say like panel one, like split anime style shot on so and so to give you that, we all seen anime, how sometimes it just, it'll split in like a
Yeah.
kind of triangular and you're like, well, face here, face here.
Right.
So I might do that. But a lot of the brilliance in there is also Sebastian and the dog fights. That was him. I had a lot of panels going on in there, and I'm
Mhm.
like, make it work. And he made it work. So a lot of that is just it shows you when you have a team that synergizes very
Yes.
well and
Yes.
that are on the same page together on a project, what can happen, because that goes the same for the colorist, and
Hmm.
that also goes same for the letterer. The lettering in Grom, it has its own identity. It's not just standard lettering. It comes alive in its own through the sounds, and a lot of times I'll just put the sounds, the exact sound I want, and my letterer told me like him just reading how I wrote the sound helps him in creating like these cool lettering effects. So it's
Yeah.
basically what you're getting is just us in full effect as a creative team on Galactic Runners of Mayhem, and it's hard to experience that because a lot of times you get cool projects that come out and it's just like this writer with this artist and this one, and they're pairing up
Hmm.
talented people, and they're trying to make it work. But us, we built something from the ground up that we're all equally passionate about, and it just oozes onto the panel, onto the story, onto the page of Galactic Runners of Mayhem.
Yeah, I definitely get that feel that this was not just, oh, someone thought up the idea and was like, I kind of just want someone to do the art. Okay, you come here, do the art. You come here, do the letter. Like, no, this was a group effort. This was a team effort. Everyone pitched in, everyone gave 110%, and it just sings on every single page, every single dialogue balloon, like all of it, man. And you're right, like from the lettering to the panel layout to the shot composition, it all has such its own identity. It's almost like these things are their own characters in the comic book about these characters. And when I pick up a comic that's like that, that ensures that I'm going to be in love. Like the story, like I'm going to care about the story. I'm more of a character driven person, which Grom also has, which we'll touch on in a minute. But I can love the story, I can dig the fight scenes, I can dig all that. But if that art is singing and it's working in tandem with the characters, with the story, it's being its own thing while helping everything else be elevated, then we go from cool looking pictures to comic art. And that's definitely what I feel like y'all have. Y'all have a genuine sense of comic art, and y'all have such a good synergy. Y'all have such a good synergy. Like we've all, I'm sure we've read a comic or we've watched a movie where it was like, okay, this was like either made by committee or they just got whoever to do whatever, and it's like, okay, this is phoned in. Like this is not, there wasn't love put into this to a high enough degree. But that ain't the problem with y'all, which is one of the reasons why I love this thing so much. Um, I did want to touch a bit on the characters because you really, really have to pay attention to how you characterize each member. Like they need to be their own person and work well together as a team. And you have your main three. You got Bash, Ripple, and Mona Lisa. And also, I gotta say, man, those names, like I know we're not biting off anything, but like those names just scream like battle toads and shit to me, man.
Oh,
Like,
a battle to I'll be straight up with you. When I was creating this, me and Sebastian, we wanted to do something throwback, and I grew up on TMNT. I love them, and I'm like, I want to do something kind of like TMNT ish.
mhm.
And he suggested we go with capybaras, and I didn't know what a capybara was. I googled, I researched, and I'm like, man, they're the most chill animal in the world. They're the
Yeah,
largest rodents in the universe. They get along with crocodiles. I'm like,
yep,
I got the fuel I need. And then I'm like, okay, well, should I do three? Should I do four? I'm like, I'm gonna do three. Battletoads was a three because they didn't go too full with
right,
four. I'm like, I like the three.
right.
And in Battletoads, the name I think it was Zit. I think was one of them. I think the other name was Pimple and
Yeah, it was
Rash,
all yeah, because
right?
yeah, because weirdly enough, like if I'm not mistaken, TMNT obviously is more originated in the '80s, but when I
Mhm.
think of Battletoads, I think of that super late '80s to early '90s
Oh
edge
yeah,
where like stuff
oh
was
yeah.
just gross for no reason. So like you had all that zit and pimple and all that stuff.
So I'm not I'm being honest. You got me here. This is the first time I admitted that. As far as like I went to Battletoads because again, I'm also a big gamer. I'm
Mhm.
that comic book writer. I'm a writer that my influences. There's books that I read, but I'm more of a visual person, and I've always been drawn to TV, cartoons, film for one, and then video game stories for me have it just I don't know subconsciously when I'm doing my comics. There's something that with one of the comics I did called Under the Flesh, the first issue I did, and it's a post-apocalyptic zombie story. But the way I introduced the characters, I remember when someone like just did a quick review on it. They're like, "Man, this is so cool! Like you kind of introduced it like you would in a video game." I went to Battletoads because again, there's so many TMNT ripoffs, but the game has its own thing. It's its own identity. It's in pop culture. It's one of the hardest NES games ever. I don't think you can beat it without
Yes.
using warps or whatever. But there's the three Rash, Zit, and Pimple, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm like, I like the fact of giving one of the capybaras something strong, and I just thought Bash right there, like you
Yeah.
bash him. His name is Bash, and that's going
And
to be a
it
lot of his
fits because
character.
he be bashing.
And
My
he, and
dude be
it
bashing.
fits his temperament, and it fits a lot about him. And if you guys read the story, you'll know. And then the other one, I have to have my calm, cool guy, but at
Mhm.
times he can flip the switch and go when he has to
Yeah.
go. And that's where I got Ripple, and I just thought
Yeah.
like a ripple in a wave, and just Ripple. And was like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about that.
Very, you know what? My dumbass didn't even think of that, but it makes so much sense now that you throw it
Yeah.
out like Ripple, like almost like Bruce Lee be talking about be water, my friend.
Oh, I love
That's
Bruce
him.
Lee.
That's Ripple, man. He be
Ripple
going
is
with the
just
flow. He flow with you, or he'll crash or bash, I guess in this case. But he that name
exactly.
definitely fits him. And weirdly enough, I don't think we've mentioned Transformers at all, but when I look at him, I think of Jazz. I think of like G1 Jazz
Jazz,
because he's just like the
yo, I
cool
could
dude
see
with the
that. I
shades,
could see
you
that. I
know,
could
but when
see
shit
that.
go down,
Yeah.
he's slicing dicing with the best of them,
He's
you
right
know?
there. So that's what I like about his temperament, where he's calm, but then he could also be the storm.
Yeah,
So I think it's important to have a character that's like that because you don't want to have them all badass and aggressive, which you could
right.
do, but you just want to have their moments of character where you see like, well, Ripple's just a chill guy. You know, he's a chill
Exactly.
capybara. You know, but
Like, I think that the best way I can describe it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm speaking from memory now, but when they fight the not Ninja Turtles, and they call them rats, and you got Mona Lisa who's just like going all to
yeah,
pieces, like what? No, you did it, and then Ripple's just about there like not cool, bro.
yeah.
Like yeah, that's what
Not
I think
cool,
of when I
bros.
think of
Not
him,
cool,
man.
Shell Bros. Yeah,
Not cool.
again. You got to have his character in even the dialogue come out.
Yep.
And that's just him. He's not just like what you called that. He's like, not cool, Mike.
Like,
Well, like
come on,
that's
man. Did
Ripple,
you
you
really have
know?
to go there? Like, I know we're about to
Yeah,
bash each other's faces in, but did you have to call us rats? Like, really? Love that.
that just makes it more fun. And
Yeah.
Mona Lisa, I love Mona Lisa's character. She's another one that's special to me, and I just feel like the name. I'm like, okay, well, this is where I'm going to go with the turtles, and I'll be honest to God. I I've seen Ninja Turtles, but I mean, so much there that I forgot there was a Mona Lisa character. I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
don't know if she's a lizard or something. I
Yeah,
found
she's
out
like
way
a
after the fact.
salamander or something. And I
Yeah.
remember she was in the OG cartoon, she was more like a regular salamander. And then I think in the 2012 when she was like an alien lizard creature.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I gotta get refreshed on the OG cartoon because I got the whole DVD set of that with the 22
Hmm.
DVDs in the van and the party wagon. So I'm
It's,
going through those. So and they're a joy. They're a joy. But so I didn't realize that. And someone like had mentioned that when I was in posting somewhere. Someone's like, yeah, there's the Mona Lisa and the Ninja Turtle. And I Googled it. I'm like, oh, she's a salamander. I'm like, that's awesome. And I don't want to throw a spoiler in there, but there's a mention of how Mona Lisa gets her name, and that
mhm.
it's he like Gangon is their father figure. He's the lizard,
Yep.
and that's another throwback. It's like that's kind of like a TMNT reference right there. Like you have the reptiles with the rodent right master. So here we have the
Right. So you
rodents with
flipped it.
like the reptile master or that
Yeah.
father figure. So little things like that is what I did to have fun. But when he mentions how he named Mona Lisa after his mom, and then it's just like I'm like, what? Like, it's just so weird that Mona Lisa was a lizard character. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so weird. I didn't plan that, guys. It's just when something's kismet, it's
Yep.
kismet. And I think that just makes it flow more on how special Grom is and just everything what I'm doing with the characters and with the world building, how things are fitting without me even realizing it and subconsciously. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot of references there. A lot.
Yeah, there's a good chunk of references, and I think y'all did a good job with having things exist that are both references and actual world building things. Like it's not just like a reference. It's just thrown in there for reference's sake. Like I can look at stuff and see, okay, I know this is a reference to this or call back to this, but it also, Jakes, just makes sense in the world. Like we got the my what was my guy's name? The shark.
Oh, Draco.
Yes. He is such a bastard. I love to hate him, but like
He's a
obviously,
street shark reference.
yep, obvious street
But
shark.
I love sharks. Genuinely, I grew up loving sharks big time. I love sharks. When I didn't want to see the Little Mermaid as a kid, my parents, we're going to see the Little Mermaid. I was fighting. I fell in love with the Little Mermaid, but the shark, I was drawn to the shark. Finding Nemo, I love the shark. Anything with
Yep.
a shark, I'm drawn to it. Shark Week. I mean, Sharknado, right? So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have a shark in Grom because I love sharks and I'm just doing it. And then it just so worked perfectly as a street shark reference.
it
So
did. It
I
really
knew they
did.
existed, but I was never big on street sharks, but I knew they existed. But
Mhm.
boom, you got your street shark reference there, without
Awesome.
even knowing it.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but the lady bunny in the beginning, what's the name?
I
Festa,
love her.
Fiesta. Yeah,
Festa. I
Festa.
love
Is
her.
she
Yeah.
Bucky O'Hare? Is she a call out to
No,
Bucky O'Hare?
she's not a Bucky O'Hare reference, but I did want to throw a bunny in there. I love bunnies as a kid. My parents didn't want to get a dog. We got a dog. Dog ran away. So we got bunnies. I got a bunny as a little. I was gonna say puppy, a little baby bunny I got named Muffin,
Nice.
and she lived with me for 12 years. There's this rabbits. You gotta love rabbits or you hate them. Some people think they have no
Yeah.
use. So
No,
I'm
no in
one that
between.
yes, I'm a rabbit lover, and I did have a Bucky O'Hare figure growing up. And you could say, yeah, I wanted to throw a rabbit in there, so you could throw it as a Bucky O'Hare reference. But she's not. But it's my love of rabbits there. But I
Right.
did have a Bucky O'Hare reference without knowing it, with the acronym SPACE,
Yes,
SPACE.
that's the first thing I thought of when I was reading like the synopsis. I'm like, okay, well, he ain't fucking around with the with
Yeah,
these
but
references,
I
man.
didn't even know. And to be honest, like I knew of Bucky O'Hare, but I was more with the toys as a kid. I didn't know it was a comic. And as I
Yeah.
got older, and then doing Grom, doing research to make sure, like I'm not doing anything outright.
Hmm.
I wanted to get in the mind space to write Grom. So I kind of had the feel once I knew I wanted to do capybaras, but I started reading a lot of old TMNT stuff, new TMNT stuff, and the IDW run. I got Bucky O'Hare reading through that. A lot of anthropomorphic stuff, Black Sad, like low keys. I was just reading everything anthropomorphic. I needed to get into a right mind space, and then the fuel was there to write Grom already, and then boom, everything came out. So when I did the space thing, I didn't notice because I came up with that acronym. That's our space is our empire, so to say. Like that's like Star Wars
Hmm.
has the empire. That's like our empire, and space stands for Space Police Authority and Command Enterprises. And I just think that's awesome. And then when I'm reading Bucky O'Hare, I read the first page, I'm like space, and like it has some other weird. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
my version is way better. But I love Bucky O'Hare. But people are gonna say that's a reference right there. I'm like, well, damn, Kismet again, because I didn't expect that.
I'm about to title this whole episode Kismet. I don't even know
Kismet.
what that is, but you keep saying it and it sounds dope
Yeah,
as fuck.
Kismet is like fate. I guess you could say it's like another word of saying it's destiny or it's fate. Like it's like meant to
Gotcha.
be. It's Kismet.
Okay,
So
okay,
yeah.
gotcha. My dumbass was sitting here imagining like an onomatopoeia from a fucking comic book. Like, is that like the sound electricity makes when something is just so on point? It's just
Kismet.
like, is that
That could be
Kismet?
a
Like,
cool SF. That could be a cool sound effects. I'm gonna try to look into include just that sound as like a sound
yeah.
effect Kismet. But yeah, like I
Cool,
don't use
cool.
it that much. If someone had used it, I'm like Kismet, and like I don't know what it was. I go and I'm like, well, shit, another cool way to say fate or destiny. So then I'll just throw it out there every now and then. But
There you go.
yeah, Kismet. A lot of things are happening with Grom. That's Kismet. One other cool thing is when we came up with the title, Sebastian like capybaras. And once I knew, I'm like, yes, sir. I'm like, thank you for including that. He lives in Uruguay. They roam free. You'd be just like crossing the street, and while you're crossing the street, like crossing the street are two capybaras, like a mom and her cub, and it's just like
Mhm.
it will just happen that way. And he rattled out like rodents of mayhem, and I'm like, it was cool, but I'm like, it needed something, and I said galactic rodents of mayhem, and right there, it was
How?
fate, right?
Just
And
bam.
I'm gonna say how because I was watching Netflix, the toys that made us, and I came across
Mhm.
the TMNT episode. And no, it was a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger episode when Mighty Morphin Power Ranger was taken off, and they were in the creation phase. They wanted something that had 8 syllables, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 8, right? So
Yep.
they did Mighty Morphin Power
Power
Rangers, right?
Rangers.
And then
Yep.
of course you got Galactic
Big
Rodents
rodents
of
of
Mayhem.
mayhem. Yeah.
I didn't make that up, man. That's another thing. That's fate. That's kismet right there.
That's
So
Kismet. That's
that's
so
how I knew
Kismet, man.
we got something special, like without even knowing. And when I saw that episode, I'm like, oh, and then I did the Galactic Rodents. I'm like, no. But yeah.
Oh man, but that's dope. See, that's what happens when you genuinely love something and something is just a
Mm-hmm.
part of you. It
Mm-hmm.
oozes into the things you create without even trying to. Like when I write a lot of my stuff, I'm a longtime anime lover since I was like 6 years old. Been playing
Uh-oh.
video games since I was 3 years old. So I
Ooh, we're the
love
same.
comics,
Mm-hmm.
like for real, like, but like so like I love comics, right? But comics as like a hardcore hobby, I only recently got into. I'd say maybe in the past 6, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm a big time film lover, cartoon lover, games, anime, manga.
That's
That's
nice.
been more of my lifelong speed. And I've had plenty of people read and be like, yo, these couple panels here, this gives me like a beat 'em up feel, or this panel here, or this poster you made for this character looks like a shot from Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z. And I'm like, it wasn't really intentional, but I'm glad you picked up on it.
Mm-hmm.
When something's a part of you, you've just been taking this stuff in, it's going to bleed into your work. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference between paying homage and trying to rip off.
True.
Like you're not out setting out to a lot of these references you didn't even plan on. You just looked up one day like, oh, that's in common with that. Oh, well, damn, it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it, leave it in
Mm-hmm.
there. And he just keeps going. And real quick, I do, since we're talking about references and inspirations, I do want to talk a bit about the villains because we talked about our man Draco, who's a absolute bastard. I love to hate him, but your boy Dark Raider,
Mm-hmm.
that guy, he is definitely the big bad who, if there's nothing else in this story that will give you those old school vibes, this guy will, as he's sitting on his throne talking to his minions, sitting there looking like Skeletor and Doctor Doom had like a love child, and then they left
Yes.
him in the microwave a little too long, and maybe a little bit of Mumra too. But like,
Oh
it's
yeah. Oh
dope.
yeah.
It's dope. Like I don't feel like, oh, you just combine these characters. Like when I see Dark Raider, I think Dark Raider. But like tell me a little bit more about him, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Dark Raider. Again, we need a villain. You're gonna need a villain, and
Yeah.
building our universe. Grom is in a faraway place. It's a distant world. You could think of it in like a Star Wars galaxy, far away if you want to. But everything is anthropomorphized, meaning we just got animal people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different planets. You got different things. There's some planets that are commingling with different species. all different animals. So I'm like, the bad guy has to be a cool animal. I'm like, what could he be? I'm like, you know what? We'll leave it a mystery, but we'll have him wear a skull. And how Skeletor has a human skull. I'm like, I need a menacing animal skull. That would be really cool. And I don't know how. I just a bear skull. If you look a bear skull looks
Bear
freaky as
skull.
hell. A bear skull. Yeah. And me and Sebastian were in the we're conjuring up, Dark Raider. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna have a bear skull. And Sebastian went with it. And I didn't say nothing about a cape. I didn't say nothing about like Sebastian. Just like again, everything just coalesced together. But I said you got to have a bear skull. And aside from the bear skull, we have to. He can't just be that typical bad guy that just hates everything and wants to destroy everything. If you
Mhm.
look at Darth Vader,
Yeah.
I mean, there's layers to Darth Vader. So I said, I want to have this guy where as we go more in the story, we're going to just uncover more layers around him and we're going to feel this guy. Like we're going to feel him. And I think in the first, arc of Galactic Runners of Mayhem and what we're doing and what we have planned out, I feel like a lot of people are going to see that he's a very special villain. And he's not just a megalomaniac kind of villain. He's
Mhm.
very layered. He's very nuanced. He has things about him that make him tick. And
Yeah.
the name alone, Dark Raider, was my play or my reference, if you will, to like Darth
Yeah. To
Vader.
Darth Vader.
Instead of
But
Darth
that's a
Vader, we'll
good
have
one.
Dark Raider.
Right.
But it sounds good in its own. And
Yeah.
again, you just see how he looks. It's his own. He's not a ripoff. He
No, 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 no.
evokes all these vibes of Mumra, yes, and that was just unintentional. That was just when Sebastian drew him up, and it's like, man, there's Mumra vibes there. The Doctor Doom vibes. I didn't hear that till recently. My one of my best friends read through Grom, and he saw him where he's first introduced. Like, man, he's like Von Doom. I'm like, okay, I wasn't even
Yes.
thinking of Von Doom, and then you brought it up just now. So we
Yeah,
just wanted to
man.
make a badass villain that you're gonna feel and that's gonna be there for a while. And Dark Raider just became who he was.
I think that's real dope, man. And the connections to ones like Doctor Doom and Darth Vader, these are your sort of larger than life supervillains, but they're not like cartoony mwahaha mustache twirlers. Like but
Mustache twirlers, I
yeah,
like
man.
that. Well,
Like
yeah,
I gotta go on like a
mustache twirlers.
little mini rant, man, if you don't mind for a second.
No,
Like
go for it.
I totally understand how a lot of folks who are more in the comic scene, the indie scene, we're like, man, we're tired of all these sympathetic, tragic villains that everyone has a sob story. Half of them get redeemed all the time, even if they don't do anything to earn redemption. The story like tries to twist the narrative and make us, think they're actually the good guy of the story, but even there's still pieces of shit like Cruella and all them. But and I get that. Like sometimes you just want that old school classic villain that's just in this to just ruin everyone's day, right? But I don't think that means we need to run to the next side and just make everyone a cartoony villain with like no genuine motivation, no depth, no nuance. You can have someone who's like a genuinely terrible person, but we still can understand why they are the way they are, or they can be someone who has dimensions or layers. And I think when I think of characters like Darth Vader and Doctor Doom, like that's them. Like pre Return of the Jedi, no one thought Darth Vader was actually going to be redeemed. But we learn
Truly.
about him. We understand,
Yeah.
more of what led him down that road. But it doesn't mean we excuse who he is. Doctor Doom is this person who's this grand, larger than life villain who can be megalomaniacal. He can even work with the good guys sometimes, even though it's usually just to further his own means. But he has that sense of complexity, and he has reasons for why he is the way he is. He's not just I am evil and I will sit and cast my evil on the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and whoever. So like Dark Raider definitely gives me those vibes of he's the big bad, he's pulling the strings. You don't want to mess with him, but there's probably more to him than what you see and what you think on that first look. And I think that's key in having a larger villain. Like you can have your Dracos, right? Your sort of lower tier ones, or like your guys who are just you don't need a whole bunch of complexity. They're just assholes. But any villain who's gonna be like key to the story, I feel like needs to have some meat. And Dark Raider definitely looks like he's going to be a meaty villain, and I love that. I love that so much. While we're still talking about characters, I do real quick want to touch on Gangon because we did reference him earlier. He's
Yeah.
probably he's probably my favorite member of the team sometimes, which is kind of fucked up because of the story.
No,
But
yeah. No, I
but
mean,
like
yeah.
I love them all, but like Gangon, he just gives me those vibes of like that older mentor or parental figure who, they're not proud of where they come from, but they're trying to make up for it. And they don't look like much, but they will mess your ass up. They will
Yeah.
mess your ass up, like Splinter
Yeah,
level,
yeah,
Genkai from Yu Yu
yeah,
Hakusho, Master
yeah.
Roshi. They will mess you up. And Gangon be messing. He don't even need his hands, bro. Don't even need his hands. He'll fuck you up with
That'd be
no
so
hands.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah, Gangon. I love Gangon. He's a special guy. I'm glad that you see what I'm doing here with him, because again, there's a little anime influence in me, in that he looks like nothing, but like he's quiet. A little bit of that cowboy where you don't know, it's just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the no name, no face kind of guy, but he's had a crazy past, and something happens when you see in the chain of events, and then he wants to make up for it, and it's just sometimes something happens where you're just like, yeah, I kind of gotta like, I
Yeah.
gotta, I gotta man up here and take care of this crap that I caused. But he will mess you up, and he will do what he has to do to protect his capybaras, just as a Splinter would. And I think a lot of what I love about Splinter is that he's frail or whatever, but when he has to move, he has to move. When he has to kick ass,
Yeah.
he has to kick ass. And then there's
Yeah.
moments where he's vulnerable. And I think it's
Definitely.
important to show that, as even parents and as a father figure, right? As a mother, like, we're vulnerable. We want to protect our kids as much as we can, and sometimes we can't, and that's a fear. And I think just having a character like Gangon made Grom what it was, because it's just he adds that other dimension to the group, and he's just amazing. And when you see the interactions with him and the rest of the cast, it's just, they're like a family. And I
Yeah.
want to also say a message where, we live in a world where things are crazy, where there's a lot of division and stuff. But I always like to think of good things, and I always like to focus on positives. And I also like to put the message in there, like, we all love that good feeling when we're with family, but
Mhm.
it's also good to know that we can have good relationships and just have that close feeling with someone who's not necessarily blood.
Right.
But we can foster those type of cool relationships, and we can create like that kind of family. It just takes work and effort. And hopefully Grom could just be a reminder of the importance of family and unity, and
Yeah.
what that means.
That's definitely what I'm picking up on. I love how, like you said, Gangon is vulnerable, even though he's like a badass out here. Like that's just a trope I love so much. The sort of unassuming badass. I love that so much. But the fact that Gangon is this complex figure who he has this past, he has these things that he's either done or bore witness to, and he's not proud of, and he can see that the ramifications of what he was a part of, and he can even look on his own adopted children's faces and be like, you just got to do it, Gangon. You just got to stick with it, man, because this is he's bearing his cross. I like that. I like when characters understand, like, this is what I got to do, and the way he just took them under his wing, and even when they're arguing with each other or with him, or they don't understand things, like he's gonna be that father figure. And like you said, as parents, we all have to understand. I mean, I'm not a parent yet. I hope to be one day, but I understand that as parents, adults, we have to understand that we will have the best intentions for our children. We love them. It doesn't mean we're going to get everything right. We will often get things wrong.
We're
They will
gonna
often
fail a
not
lot.
understand when we get things wrong, but it's still our duty and our place to still do our best and still prepare them for this world. Because um, as weird and as kind of morbid as this may sound, a parent's best dream is a child who is prepared for their departure, so that they know that when they're not here anymore, the child is going to go out and be out in the world doing their own thing, sustaining themselves, being great in their own right. It's the joy of every parent to know that their child will outlive them and that they will be okay. And I definitely look at Gangon as that guy, and that kind of touches me as someone whose father is unfortunately no longer here, my father or my mother. But I love that Gangon definitely has that relationship and that sense of created family. That's another thing I really like, because sometimes your parents they ain't the best, or maybe sometimes they are the best, but they're not around for very long. And sometimes you have to make new parents, or you have to meet someone who's going to be like a brother or sister,
Exactly.
and just having that bond. And even among Grom itself, among the actual Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, there's such a strong sibling bond there. They definitely, I don't read them and think of, excuse me, I don't read them and think they're just some people together. They're like, no, that's a family.
Hmm.
It's genuinely a family. If you don't mind asking, do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one sister. One
Okay.
sister. Yep.
Did you have to like draw from your experiences with her to help inform you of how to do them at all?
I definitely took some because with me and my family, I'm here in Florida, and I had moved out in my mid to late 20s, and my sister had moved out way ahead. She was way. She put it like this. You could appreciate this, being that you're an anime guy. My anime love,
Mhm.
okay, got my sister absorbed that. Okay, big time. She drew on that so much that she got immersed in the culture, and she got to the point where she learned how to speak Japanese fluently, so well to the point where she was working in Japan, teaching English to Japanese students.
Damn,
So
like
yeah,
that's
she
dope.
she's she did what I always wanted to do, man. She's an OG in that sense,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a lot of inspiration from her and our relationship. Like you said, it seeps into what you're writing unconsciously. So there's a reason why I also wanted to have like a family element to Grom, and just something where people could relate to and people could understand the importance of family, and even if, again, if they're not blood, how you can create a relationship and become something special, and kind of have that. And my sister is someone I love very dearly, and she's very special. She's
Nice.
very stubborn, very stubborn. She's the type that she will not forget something. Like, we'll talk, and she'll be like, you didn't pay me that dollar from when I cleaned your room back when you were like 10 years old. I'm like, man, you still remember that? I'm like,
Bro,
you
up
got to get
on you on the
over
bike,
that,
like
man.
my $2 at,
Come
like
on. And she'll still like hate me. I'm like, I'm not that kid that was annoying you and picking on you. Like, like I was a bad brother in some parts, but I said, come on, man. We grow up and we mature, but that's just a testament to her character and how driven she is. And just, she got some bash of her in there. She had,
okay.
so there's this, yeah, I'll draw on from family and from friends and close relationships in my life that I guess unwillingly or unknowingly, it'll just
Yeah.
ooze out onto the script.
Yeah, man. As creators, it's sort of like a uncalled upon like blessing that we didn't necessarily ask for. But like when we are these creative types, we retain so much from the people who've touched us in life. And
Hmm.
when we sit down and we start making our own characters, they're going to come in there, for from the positive and the negative. Like I can look on plenty of my characters, and there are some who are like I sat down and like, no, this is like my reference for this person, or this is my paying tribute to this person. But then some stuff is just, it just happens. It just
Hmm.
happens because these people are important to us. They're in our minds, and when we start to create characters, they're going to bleed into that. But it's good that you recognize that and you use that to your advantage. One thing also I did want to talk about is the humor, because we've been a little heavy here talking about on the on the episode, but we before we get close to wrapping up, we do have to talk about this humor, man. I love, if there's one thing I love, it's a self-aware book. It's a self-aware story. And I definitely feel like you're having fun. Y'all are having fun when y'all are writing this. Whether it's a reference, or whether it's just a certain dynamic or something that's very, very small. And I don't know necessarily if this was intentional. I mean, it probably was, but there's a certain character who I won't spoil, but there's a certain character who gets something that gives them a very splitting headache. Let's just say that, right? And it's in like the early part where like stuff's starting to go down. Something happens, the person has a splitting headache and they're like down for the count. And then somebody else just happens to need some bullets. And they look down and it's the bullets from the first gun. It's like, oh, you don't mind if I use these days? And like little stuff like that is just so
I got
dope.
it now. I got it
So,
now.
yeah,
I got it now.
it's
I
so
got it now.
dope, man. And I remember when I saw that panel, I'm like, that was so slick. Like this person just got domed next to you, and you just like, yeah, don't think you're gonna be needing these. I'm just gonna borrow these for a second.
Yeah, you'll be needing these bullets for a while. Yeah.
You know?
A lot of the humor in there is it's natural humor. It's just stuff that. So I got a way of where I try. I mean, it's hard to do one-liners, but I'll just try to find something.
Mhm.
And like you said, the most important thing you said is have fun with it. That scene that you mentioned, there's a Star Wars reference right in that scene.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, now that you've said that, I know exactly what you're talking
yeah,
about.
so that was intentional because I want people to know that when I make my characters, I do something for a reason. I will never have a recut of the first issue of GROM where I change something to appease something. No, this is like I know what I'm going into, I know what I'm doing.
Mm.
And so the humor also is just it's what it is. It's like you gotta have it's like a roller coaster. You gotta have your seriousness, you have to have your your emotion, your deep stuff, and then you gotta have fun. And in the
Yeah.
90s and the child, there's a lot of fun there. So you gotta have one-liners, you gotta have fun with your characters, and you have to just let things breathe and let your characters take over. Sometimes, like I create a scene, I'm like, yeah, Gangon will kind of do this, like because he's pushed to that point. Like, yeah, he'd do that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, like oh, Mona Lisa's gonna do. Yeah,
Mhm.
you got to let them take over. And
Yeah,
sometimes I'll
they just
create
start
something
writing
and
themselves. Yeah.
they write themselves, and so a lot of the humor and it is also compliments to my editor. I have a great editor that I work with that I was referred to me. She's just amazing. She challenges me, and I love challenges because I'll write my stuff, and then she'll be like, okay, well, this. She'll give me some dialogue, bits, and she'll be like, you could change this for this, or you could add this here. It's not all the time, but she'll, or you can change this, and I don't always use it. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's a little cheesy, ain't gonna work for me. Like,
Yeah.
and she'll make me like, oh, I'm using that. So it works. And again, that's because she also believes in GROM and she's having fun with it. And we also have a good chemistry. So it's sometimes it's hard to write humor, but then it's just if you're having fun and you know your material, or you know what you're stepping into, your wheelhouse, it'll come natural. And it's also cool when you work with someone who could, encourage more out of you
Yeah,
with an
definitely.
editor.
I love how you did bring up the fact that it is hard to write humor. It's I
No, it
honestly
is.
like I would write a fight scene, a death scene, all that stuff before I tried to be funny when I first started writing. And looking back on some of my early attempts, it's nothing but a cringe volcano. But like I one of the
Cringe volcano, damn.
yeah.
That's
Like,
rough.
why did I and I made
Mm.
it public? Oh, kill me.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like, one of the things that I learned is that when you know the characters, like how you touched on, when you know the characters, when you have them to the point where they're practically writing themselves, all you really have to do is set up a scenario, honestly portray how the characters will react, and it's like you're bound to get something funny. Like as long as I'm not trying to be like, oh well, this character is the funny one. If I
Mhm.
let each person like be their own person, things will happen.
They'll
They will
have their
have
moments.
responses. Yes,
They'll
like
have their moments.
yes, exactly. And for one person, they may be more of a roast god. This other person may be so off the wall with what they say, like damn near everything is funny. This other person just may be like have super over the top expressions. Like you can let your characters just be who they are in the scene, and that itself will
Mhm.
be funny. But when you're trying to be like, oh, okay, well, I need to have this person be the comic relief, and that
Mhm.
you're gonna be there all day, and most of it's not gonna be funny. Because when you're trying to be funny, that's when you're not funny. Just let it be funny, then it'll be funny. I know that didn't make sense. Don't try to make it make sense. Just listen to me. But anyway,
Let the characters take over. Because if you look at
yes.
TMNT, right? Like Michelangelo's a party guy. He's like the funny guy. But I mean, there's moments where Raffles do something funny, will say something funny. Leonardo will have
Hmm.
his moments. And Donatello will do something. And you're just like, they have their
Yeah.
moments, and it's built into their character. So yeah, just let it flow and let it be organic. Try for that. The most important thing. Don't force the
Exactly.
comedy out.
And even just letting them play off each other a
Hmm.
lot of times, because when you have, especially with this ensemble cast, you have personalities that are so different.
Hmm.
You know, like if you have Bash and Ripple in the same room, well, you know that in some ways they're like polar opposites. Well, that's comedy gold right there.
Hmm.
Gangon is this dope older dude who seems so chill, but he'll like hit you with the quick draw of the tongue and like this that type of stuff he does. And even the villains, like they can have their moments where there's humor and it's brought there, and it adds such a level of weirdly enough, humanity. I know we're talking
Hmm.
about anthro
Yeah,
characters,
yeah,
but it,
yeah,
it does
for
add that
sure.
that human element, you know. Because you don't no one walks around all the time and is serious and oh I'm broody her. No, like stuff happens. You're gonna do stuff that's gonna make somebody else laugh. Like this, just come on, man. Like that's such a simple thing, but it's something that goes a long way, man. And that's because this book has that and has it so naturally. I never feel like it's forced. That's how I know we're dealing with the quality product here, man.
Hmm.
And real quick before we wrap up, because I think we have been getting close to an hour now.
Hmm.
Um, I did want to talk real quick about some of your other stuff, which I didn't even know how much other stuff you had.
Hmm.
You said you had one that was like a post-apocalyptic. Is this things that we can go out and find now? Could it be future content? Like what are we talking
Ooh.
about here?
Yeah, so as I be, dabbled into, or to dabble now, let's just say plunge headfirst into comic book creation.
Mhm.
My first crowdfunded project was a project that was very dear to my heart. And it hits that horror centric, because I'm a horror guy as well. Like that's the whole other story, right? We could be the Saturday morning cartoon, video game, anime person, but horror is a big thing for me as well. And the Walking Dead kind of got me back into comics. I was reading the comic books of The Walking Dead and I was enjoying it. And then it got to the point where, again, I love zombies. And it's just
Yep.
like, the story was just like, it was coming formulaic to an extent. You have a safe haven threatened by a madman. Okay, now safe haven gone, new safe haven. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm like, man, there's things you can do with this to still keep it ongoing. And, but again, Kirkman's a great writer, but I'm like, I gotta just do my own stuff. And that's when
Yeah.
Under the Flesh is the first thing that I crowdfunded. And I work with an awesome artist. His name is JL Giles.
Mhm.
And he did a little bit of Marvel work here and there, nothing crazy. Um, but he got more Marvel work after he worked with me on Under the Flesh. I was able to crowdfund the first two issues, and they're working on the third issue. But he got hit with so much like Marvel work. He did the comic for Spider-Man's Homecoming in the Blu-ray. He did the comic for that. He did some Thor stuff. He was taking off, and I'm like, damn. Well, I got to do something. I can't, and I don't want to. I didn't want to take that decision of continuing the comic with
Yeah.
another artist. So I shelved it and I said, well, I got to do something else. And I'm thinking, well, let me do a one shot because I get that done. People can gauge my storytelling work. So
Right.
I did Lair. Lair is something that there's a little Death Note influence in there. You appreciate anime. You
Mhm.
might see it if you ever read it, but Lair is one, Lair. That one's on Indiegogo. That one you can still get copies of that. And that's
Okay.
my paradimensional demon horror story. I wanted to do something really dark and something that was kind of different. So that's Lair. Then I had something called Pistolera. I always wanted to write a Western, and I kickstarted Pistolera. And interestingly enough, I had a producer reach out to me on Kickstarter, and I thought it was a joke, and it turned out he's a legit dude. So we went back and forth trying to make something happen. Nothing came out of it yet, but that's something I might revisit in reaching back out with that producer and say, hey, listen, let's see if maybe we can get something done. Because he was involved in Warrior Nun getting brought to Netflix. So, and then what else do I got?
I love
Oh,
that
and now I
name
got,
though. Pistoletta. That's dope.
yeah,
That's real dope.
it's a pregnant gunslinger. She's pregnant and she's a gunslinger. So I want to do something
Okay.
crazy. I want to do something crazy and out there. And I have fun with it. And again, I wanted to write a Western. Like I said, I wrote a Western. That was also a one shot, 30-page one shot. Lair was a 60-something page one shot. And then interestingly enough, JL, who was I did Under the Flesh with,
Mhm.
and I did Galactic Runners of Mayhem. He's like, hey, he's like, I got time in my schedule. Let's sync up. And he wanted to work on kind of like an anthology. We always had an idea of doing an anthology comic together that's based on like Tales from the Crypt, Eerie, those kind of books in the 70s where it's a black and white comic. And
Yeah.
he wanted to do kind of like Lovecraftian stuff. So, boom, we did The Deep Dark, which is an amazing one-shot comic. And then we also have
Nice.
Black Heart Manor, which funded, and we're about to, we're in the process of fulfilling that, getting it sent to print. We just need a couple art files to be done, but we're about to get that one done. So he didn't want to continue Under the Flesh. He was like, I'm in a different space. You know, he didn't want to
Mhm.
do the whole zombie thing. And the twist to
Yeah.
Under the Flesh, real quick, it's a zombie virus, but it's not a zombie virus. I'm playing all the zombie stereotypes, but I had something in mind to flip it on its head. We're like, holy shit, this ain't
Subverting
a
our
zombie virus.
expectations,
Because,
you could say.
yeah, so I do want to go back to Under the Flesh because I still have people that will back my stuff. And I was in Tampa Bay Comic Con. That was my first Comic Con ever. It was 2 years ago, before COVID and everything. And someone came up to me like, oh, like, you, Gilbert Deltrez, you did Under the Flesh. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, wow. They're like, yeah, I backed that. I'm like, what? I'm like, that was the coolest thing that like ever happened to me. That a backer of my stuff was at a convention and recognized
That's
me.
dope,
That's crazy.
man.
I'm so obscure that I'm so underground. It's ridiculous. So I know that there's something there. And when you do updates for a project, I would do an update on Kickstarter for Under the Flesh, promoting like Galactic Ordinance of Mayhem. So everyone who backed Under the Flesh will get that update. Hey, the good news is I'm doing other stuff. The bad news is I'm not continuing Under the Flesh yet, but I'm just, getting out there. And
Yeah.
someone responded to me like, man, every time I get an update, I swear Under the Flesh is coming back. So it's just the little people that backed it that still like want something from it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna finish that comic. It's gonna happen. And if I can't do it with JL, I'm waiting for the right artist with the right style to just take over because I have already written to the first arc. And again, it's another love letter to horror and zombies, and it's just my
Yeah.
way of saying, hey, you could do it different.
Right.
Because that virus only infected the men. Only the men were infected, not the women. So that was making it
Okay.
before diversity and pushing all that thing was a thing. If you see the cast of Under the Flesh, I had a strong black female cop. I had a Muslim, okay, with the hijab and everything.
Mhm.
I was all out, man. I was all out.
Nice.
I was just all out, man. And
Oh,
hopefully I could bring that back. Under the Flesh, if you guys just see it on Kickstarter, you could just see the art, you could just see what was the mind behind that. And just know if Galactic Runners of Mayhem is badass, you already know that I got range. I got range.
yeah.
And Under the Flesh is proof of that, and so is all the other stuff I put out. If you check it out,
That's real dope, man. I love how multifaceted you are. I love how you're clearly with Grom, you're going for a certain aesthetic, a certain feel, but you also have all these other things that you can do too. And I honestly think that that's one of the sort of pitfalls of Western comics, that we've become too
thank
focused
you.
on just doing the superhero stuff, which I do love. But like, you can do horror, you can do
Mhm.
sci-fi, thriller, all types of stuff. Like, get weird with it. Like, and when people always say, well, no wonder manga's kicking our ass. No wonder manga's kicking our ass because so much stuff is woke. And I'm like, yeah, that's part of it. But even before stuff got woke, you only had like what, maybe one noteworthy comic book in the West that wasn't related to superheroes. Like, what if it wasn't superhero shit or the Wicked and the Divine? I don't know what it was for like the early 2010s. So like, when people start to do more stuff like what you're doing and go off that beaten path and start venturing out doing other types of stories, or if you want to do superhero stuff, like, put a different spin on it. Maybe like you can have it be superheroes but have it not be on Earth, or have it be in a different culture or medieval times or something, just get
You could
out.
do so much, but you
You can
got to
do
be
so
creative
much.
and you can't be afraid. You got to be risky. And a lot of
Yeah.
times with storytelling, a lot of these big companies are mainstream. I'm underground for a reason. Like I do stuff that, you probably like, yeah, that's risky. There's not a market for it, but it's a great story. And if it has that kind of push to get more eyes on it,
Mhm.
it would deliver. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
it will find its audience. Like, there's an audience out there for everything. It's just like you said, because a lot of this stuff isn't, we're mainstream,
Mhm.
then we have to get those eyes on it. But that's the beautiful part of, being in the indie scene, where, okay, you trade the exposure and like the built-in sort of audience for people who are like loyal to Marvel or DC or whoever, but because you also don't have those big names who are saying, no, we need you to do this because this figure says that this is this. You have
There's also so much control over a lot of the things that you can't have fun.
Mhm.
And not only that, there's so people dedicated to certain fan bases that they're like manga. So we already know how the power of manga. And if you look at it, manga, it's kind of homogenized art. I mean, the big oversized eyes. It's kind of cookie cutter in its approach. But what makes it stand out is, okay, what's this story? What's so outrageous here? What powers this one has? And it
Yeah,
takes you all over the place. And
right.
they don't care about driving those narratives. In the West, it's more like, okay, like it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that, until there's a recipe where, okay, this could work. Then you might see like, okay, well, we'll do a little bit more risk. Like
Mhm.
me with Grom, that book has the most mass appeal. It's the most mainstream marketable. And
Yeah.
even me trying to push that book, like I'll get resistance. I'll try to post it in like maybe a TMNT group, and they'll, the hardcore turtle guys be like, like I'm like, how much?
Uh-huh.
I'm with you. I'm like you. I
I'm
just
one
like
of
to create
you.
stories, and instead of doing TMNT fan fiction, I want to create something. And
Right.
if you look at Eastman and Laird, there's references in TMNT. There's
Yeah.
Daredevil references.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
Ronin
Right.
references. There's so many references. X-Men references. I mean, and they love Jack Kirby growing up, and they want to do the Star Wars references in there. They're there, man. They are there. So I'm just following suit with Grom, putting the references in there because I love TMNT so much. It's like I made this
Exactly.
for you, and it's like, hey, here's this pizza. It's just not in the shape of a turtle. It's in the shape of a capybara. Take a slice. The hell? I ain't
Nah,
touching
nah,
that.
nah. All
Are
see
you?
no shell. It's in battle. Like, what are
Yeah,
you doing, man?
it's
Come on,
crazy,
man. Come
but
on.
it's because of how mainstream it is. It's like if again, if it's not mainstream, it's like, okay, well, is there a market for it? And we're seeing stuff that's created with passion, right? And then you see the stuff that's just, phoned home just because, hey, well, we
Yeah.
got to release something like this, we got to release something like that, and okay, it doesn't work.
Right. Let's have another superhero movie that's just like the other 50,000 that follow this formula exactly. Even though before all this started, we didn't think it was even possible to have a whole universe built off superheroes. Now that we know it's a formula, no, we can't deviate at all. And so I'm
Exactly.
like,
You look at the movies now; it's like hard to do something different.
mhm,
As a movie, it's like, okay, the comic movie's okay, great, but not trying to do something different. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe we'll see a lot of manga live action through the West because they're like, well, all these kids are buying mangas. Well, let's let a studio do something and create something and make it work because it's already a baked in audience. So
right.
everything is risk now, and just it's all safe and play. And a lot of the stories suffer. Like if we look at Star Wars, I'm not a fan of the new trilogy. I never said I hate it or anything. I gave each one a chance from the new trilogy. I just
And
I didn't like it. It didn't sit well with me. I thought like there's a lack of creativity. There's a lack of
yeah,
originality. It was just a lot of stuff that was phoned home. So I think a lot of the great properties suffer because of you know just let's make a profit. Let's how much we're going to make with this.
yeah.
And it
The
doesn't work.
moment, exactly. The moment these stop being passions or projects of passion that can earn you $1 billion, once they stop being that and you just see them as a way to make $1 billion, you've already lost the game because that's how you get your stuff like Rise of Skywalker, where it's just, oh well, I'm trying to outdo the guy who came before me, so I'm gonna just throw in a bunch of fan service and references, but none of it's gonna mean anything. The story's
It's
not
like
gonna
the
mean
horrible
anything.
fan service you could
Right.
do is like not even good.
It's
I
the
mean,
worst
dang,
kind of fan service. Like,
what
oh, well, they said
the
they want to see Ray train, so I'll have her train for like 2 minutes. They
right?
wanted,
It's like
I'm going to
come
bring
on,
Palpatine back, but it won't make sense, So you just sitting here like,
exactly.
what are y'all doing? You're just trying to do stuff to sort of appease the fans instead of please the fans. You're just trying to appease us. That's not what
And
we
that's the
want,
thing.
you
If you
know?
would have been trying to please the fans in the beginning, because the beginning was kind of set up in a good way, but then towards the
Mm-hmm.
end it tapered off for me. So it's just like you know what I mean. You're not bringing the A game the whole way, and then you saw already the second movie kind of just disjointed, and it's just like you
Yeah.
get jolted. It's like what the heck is this going? And then the characters, nothing is jiving. If you look at, I'll just go with one. Like I know we're digressing. I'll just do one
That's
little
fine.
tidbit. Finn, I thought was going to be an amazing character because it's like you see
Yes.
this, was it he's a stormtrooper, and it's like oh wow, so they're taken from their home, they're orphans, whatever. Who knows how, right? Like you could go
Mm-hmm.
into such a crazy story of how the Empire just gets these people. Who knows? Like you could go into like anything with that. They oppress other planets. They take it. You can do whatever with that. That's
Yep.
so amazing. And I'm like, man, if it goes to where he don't know he's force sensitive and he's just a stormtrooper and now he's wielding a Jedi blade, like I'm like, you can do so much with that.
Right.
And he just turned into comic relief slapstick, like, and then there's no, it's like he's saying where he comes from, but then like he's killing stormtroopers like nothing. It's just like it's just
Yeah.
so bad. It's just, and every little thing is just doesn't make sense. And I feel like the original trilogy was done with intent, with passion, and it was such a big hit. And I know it's big shoes to follow, but just
Mhm.
focus on a good story that pleases the fans, right? And we want to make new fans. I get that, but what they did just created
Yeah, man.
division in one of the most, iconic film franchises in it ever, if we can even go there.
No,
And
no,
they
you
shot themselves in their
definitely,
own foot, and then we're just hoping it can get back. I'm not as crazy about Star Wars as I used to
definitely.
be,
It's
but
sad, but you at some point you just have to realize like they don't care. They don't look at this as um sort of like people who are have their time to mold this thing and help it elevate. They either see it as a cash cow like
it's just a
J.J.
cash
Abrams,
cow.
or they
Mhm.
see it as their opportunity to make themselves greater, not as just
Right.
a part of this growing spirit for Star
Mhm.
Wars, but like no, it's I'm Ryan Johnson, so I'm gonna put my stamp on it, and that's my Star Wars. So
Right,
either
right,
way,
right.
you end up with a product that is clearly made by someone who does not care. Like the fact that Finn was such a humongous ball drop when he should have been like the
He could have been a
rallying
cool
point for
character.
this whole generation of new Star Wars fans, but he was completely sidelined as just such a missed opportunity. But that just tells me that we just got to be on our Thanos about this shit, and we just got to do it ourselves, man. Like we
And
want that
support indie
that dope
stuff. Just
star,
support indie stuff. There's a lot of good
yeah,
projects
definitely,
out there that are not getting a platform or not getting noticed, and it's not through no fault of theirs. It's just obscurity is a thing. When you're creating a book, it's an ocean, and you got to talk
yeah,
about your book. And if you don't have a yacht with a big megaphone, who's going to hear you?
mm, yeah,
So it's just like it's just we helping each other out to get noticed. But there,
mm,
I would love for indie comics to like revolutionize the comic book game in a way that makes you really think. And I think of like the Image, how Image came about and became a big player when it first started. Now Image it doesn't do nothing for me now. And I don't know, I'm just seeing this thing happen, this kind of trend, and I just would love to see this new revolution in great indie comics. I mean, I'm not talking about
yeah,
good art. We're talking about good art and good story
yes.
and something that could bring, people, make people excited again.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
hopefully
And
we'll get there.
I think we will. I think the fact that we're sort of in the cusp of this age that we're in now, where it's like every time you turn around, mainstream folks are doing more and more to piss away their audience, and more people
True.
are, well, most people are just going to manga by default, which I completely understand. I mean, I love manga too, but you also have some people who are willing to take more of a risk on an indie title, something that maybe they had no knowledge about at all. They don't know the writer. They just look, hey, this looks dope. It's way better than what I'm seeing from over here. So let me take a look.
Mhm.
And yeah, unfortunately, because we're all starting out in this sea of each other, it can become just a sea of voices, a sea of visions, and some people are trying to stand out. But I think part of helping things change culture wise will be realizing that we don't have to be each other's competition. Eric July on YouTube made a video a while ago where he was talking about how he's making his own comic book universe. And he said, I'm not competing with my contemporaries. I'm gunning for that. I'm gunning for that where DC and Marvel are. Like y'all around me, y'all are not my enemies. Y'all are not my competition. The only one the one who wears number one headband is them. And I feel like that's a much better attitude to have. Like when I look around me, I don't see like, oh well, I need to be better than this person, or I need to be, I need to dunk on this person, I need to do this. Like as far as I'm concerned, as weird as it sounds, we're in a community, and like at the end of the day, we all just want to tell
We
our own
we
dope
need
stories.
we need more of that, and I think there's I'll say this, like there's a kind of a fear or maybe a hesitance in wanting to push like people that have a platform that, like, let's say Eric D. July, or like a Clownfish, or like, like a Star Wars Girl, or like people that have, big platforms, feeling like, do I have to put it? Well, I don't have to push that. I don't have to push that. It's like, okay, they'll push certain books, or they'll push a book that's done by a guy who's been published by DC, published by Marvel. He already has a fan base. You know what I mean? Like, he's okay. He might not need a push as someone who has a great project, but that's just not getting the push. And if your ideology is, well, we want to crush mainstream, we want mainstream to stop what mainstream's doing, what's the best way to do that? Then share out other great stuff. And I've seen on my end how there's gatekeeping in mainstream. There's even gatekeeping on the indie side that has influence. Because
Yeah.
again, I don't know how much influence I have. And I don't know how much influence you have. We're trying to make waves here and there, but we're not like the Eric D. Julys. We're not like the big names that rightfully worked hard and earned their way. But I feel
Mhm.
like, if you share, who's going to complain about helping someone out? You know what I'm saying? There's a saying that's like, well, no one owes you anything. Yeah, I get it, but do we complain when we want? Is there a complaint about helping someone? Like, is there a
Yeah.
complaint on that? Like, if you think about Christmas, right? Better to
Mhm.
give than to receive. Why? Because it makes you feel better that you helped
Yeah.
someone out and you got someone out. But I noticed like a hesitance to, feature certain people, to push certain people. And you got to battle that. And even if you look at crowdfunding, right? The
Mhm.
competition is I'm dealing with Keanu Reeves. How do I deal with John Wick? He teamed up with Boom
Yeah.
Studios, and they got Berserker comic. They made 3 million. It's business. I get it. If you could do that and then make your money and then launch it in comic book shops or launch it out there, you already made your 3 million.
Mhm.
That's what I'm competing against. It's like, how do you like John Wick got a new comic like that? Well, I got space capybaras. I got a pregnant gunslinger. I got it's just what you're dealing with. So you just got to grind and grind and
Yeah,
grind and
man.
carve away until you get some small little following that wants your book, that enjoys your book, that will help support you to make your book happen. Because until I win the lottery, I'm stuck crowdfunding. I mean,
Yeah.
Sebastian, he's awesome artist. I gotta pay that dude a page rate. I mean, he can't do it for free. He got to put food
Oh,
on his table. I got to put food
right.
on my table. We got to get to make this kind of like a business that could, make it. But yeah, there's so much, man. We dive
Yeah.
into a deep hole that could go everywhere, as you can
Yeah,
see
we
with
really
indie
could.
comics.
But I think just the takeaway from this is, everyone is in a different spot. Some folks are just starting out. Some folks have immense success, and no one is entitled to a piece of anybody else's pie.
True that.
But I do understand where I think some of
But
the bigger names,
here's one thing I'll say. You say no one's entitled to someone else's pie, right?
yeah.
What's the pie we're talking about? Customers,
Uh,
right?
well,
Fans, right?
customers, yeah, or just I guess
So let's just
using
say,
their platform necessarily in the way that other people think. So I think that it's good to help people. I think it's good to use your larger platform to help other people, but you are the determiner of how that is best done. Like, I can't look at your model and say, you're not doing XYZ like I think, so I think you should, so you're a failure. Like, I don't know. I don't know
no,
what's going on
I
the
wouldn't
back
go
end.
harsh like that. I would always
Yeah.
go professional and say, hey, why it's important to help other creators out. And I would just say that by promoting a book or by having someone on a stream to talk about a book, that's not guaranteeing that your customers or your fan base are going to buy that book. It's
You're
just
right
saying,
about
hey,
that.
this guy got another book. Is that saying they're all going to throw money into that person's book? They got to look at the book. They got to believe in the book. Now, if someone
Mhm.
has a great book and you have a big audience, you're like, yeah, well, I don't want him to have on my channel, knowing he got a great book or knowing that's on you. You can't, no one can force anyone to put anyone on. I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that piece of the pie you're talking about is still a paying consumer that has to pay something. What's
Yeah.
the harm in letting them see something? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
this is a great time to be a fan because you have so many options. And even crowdfunding is like you have a lot of options for comic books.
Yeah.
So if someone has that
There's a
platform
lot of stuff out here.
and they share it out, it's just like, well, that's another cool comic I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
It all it does is serve the movement or this indie movement better because now you'll have just more people flocking towards crowdfunding, not just looking for Keanu Reeves's comic, but because so and so talking about this one's comic and it's just getting organic reaction and it's growing. The
Yeah.
best for me, sharing is caring. And again, if I ever get Animate. If I ever get to the point where GROM blows up and I got a YouTube channel with 200,000 subscribers, and like, hey, Gilly, remember I had you on my show, Unsigned Hype. I got my anime book out. You want to put me on it? And I'm like, and I ignore you completely. That says a lot about me. I would never do that. Trust me, if I ever get to that level, I want to be the one that says, hey, there's a cool book. If you like it, back it.
Yeah.
Boom. And let's go to the next book. And just keep on doing that because, again, it's just creating awareness. And it's not, stagnant. It's not being in a level of stagnation. It's just creating innovation because you're sharing cool stories. If we're ever going to kick manga's ass, I mean, I don't trust mainstream to do it unless mainstream is going to focus on more creator-owned comics because there's a lot of great stuff. But there's just nothing out there.
Yeah.
The market is not pushing it. And if you even look at mainstream, the Penguin Random House wants to buy Simon & Schuster. They want to create a monopoly. So there's more control over what gets into mainstream, making it harder for indie people to get our voices out. So it's just we're on the underground, and if we get more out there, it just helps our cause. And I would love to be alive to see indie just take off in such a way where there's a platform that has so many indie comics, not like a Comixology, because you get lost, but that has it in a way with great stuff. Because again, there's a lot of amateur stuff out there. You got to earn your way to get, you got to earn your way to get into there. But if you earn your way and you got a decent product where it's something that will constantly get spotlight to offer people alternatives. And manga's doing that. Whereas I hope we can get there with comics because comics set the way for mangas.
I definitely think we will. I think we can. And as long as we got people like you at the helm, at the wheel, out here grinding all the time, just making the dopest stories they can, linking up to other like-minded people, other creators, where it's going to be good. I think the culture will be in a better place, in a few years. It's going to be some work to get there, but as long as all we got to do is we got to run our races the best way we can, which is by telling the best stories, loving our audience, appreciating our audience, giving the best product we can, not being out here caught up in a bunch of petty drama, trying to destroy everybody else or talk about, this person said
of the drama on Twitter
thing, let's destroy their lives. Like,
crazy.
Get all that shit out of here, man.
I gotta take a break of Twitter because sometimes it just gets like I'll go scroll through the comments. I'm like, I just can't. I'm like, that's energy, man. I'm like, I can't, man. I can't.
Yes.
Too much negativity, man. We need positivity, right? So if anything, positivity and hope.
Good vibes,
we'll get
man.
to that place and good vibes, right?
Good vibes like you brought on, man. And I can't thank you enough for coming on, sitting down, chatting it up with your boy.
Thanks for the
today,
invite,
man.
brother.
Of course, man. Y'all out there, I can't stress this enough. Galactic Rodents of Mayhem by Gilbert Del Trez, aka Gilly Writes Comics. Check it out. The link is in the description to go to Kickstarter right now. Get your own copy, reserve that shit, cop that shit, read that shit, love that shit, man. I'm telling you, you will not be steered wrong, man. I gotta have you back on at some point.
Anytime you want me on, dude, to talk anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Just hit me up. You hit me up on Twitter. I don't like going on my DMs that much, but I'll go to see. But I'll answer your DMs, because I got you anytime. Boom, let me know. Hey, I'm thinking about doing something.
Awesome, man.
I'll be there, so no worries.
Love it, man. And thank y'all so much for listening to us on another episode of Unsigned Hype, where I get more eyes on another hidden gem. And we will be back. But for now, I'm Anime.
Gilly Writes Comics. Thanks for having me.
And we'll talk to y'all later. Deuces.
Later.